officers, and I don't think that it would be as beneficial to other members as it is tailored to the chapter officers.
Any other debate? And Ponchatoula, if you wouldn't mind putting your hand down. Cecily.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I believe that this should be passed, that we should allow COLT conference to be open to everyone, because it would allow training for those who are looking to be a chapter officer, and also to your chapter officers, just to get everyone in your chapter involved and letting them learn leadership skills that we learn as chapter officers at COLT conference.
Keep in mind, Peyton, to clarify for you, delegates can propose other ideas that are within the realm of this conference also. We're not, at this point, you're not necessarily debating whether or not you want to open, expand. You can, other ideas can be generated right
now. Vinton?
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I am for this movement, as it would be good to show other members like what it's like to be an officer, so they can get the idea of what they would have to go through, and maybe even, I don't know, changing the name up so it doesn't just apply to the officers. So I think it'd be a good idea. So that's why I'm for it.
Oh, and keep in mind that when we get to later in the process and get to our other discussions, you can move to recommend a name change in our committee report that when we send it to the general delegate body and the executive committee also.
Okay.
Anyone else have any more debate? Anything they'd like to say? Ponchatoula.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we should, if anything, create a new event for students who aren't chapter officers, because we don't have any events during the year other than COLT that is specifically for chapter officers. Everything else is open for other chapter members, but this is the one event that is tailored to helping chapter officers with ideas and new ways to involve their chapters. And I don't think it would be as beneficial to the officers that go if there are non-officer members there, because it wouldn't be tailored to their needs.
For another point of clarification for you, I would recommend that you go to that website that I put in the chat bar. There's a document called Committee 1 Research. There were a couple of questions that the area officers asked regarding COLT conferences. You can see some data that we were able to pull that might give you some more ideas or give you some more background.
Okay, any other thoughts, debate?
Peyton, if there's no more, if you're ready, if y'all have some small group topics that are made up, we can move on to that. And then we can start formulating a report.
Okay, so we have that research, Mr. Lejeune. Do you mind pulling that up before we break into, I guess, small groups?
Yeah, I can do that.
And then small group discussion leaders, would y'all rather break up into smaller groups or just do a whole group kind of discussion?
I think a whole group will be fine because there's not that many of us.
Okay, well, I leave it to y'all then.
So just a reminder, everyone, this is kind of just a discussion. You can kind of say what your ideas on the topic are, like the pros and cons, and especially after seeing the information that we've been given.
Yeah, for this group discussion, you don't need to raise your hand or anything like that. This is very informal. Just keep that in mind.
Maybe just to get a jumping off point, I know someone mentioned that maybe if COLT conference was changed, maybe it should have a different name. Do you have any ideas on that?
Idea wise, I'm open to anything really. I was just kind of like suggesting a point. Like it would be better for everyone to learn what an officer would do instead of just, kind of seeing what they want to be one day. But idea wise of names, I'm open to ideas.
So does anyone else have any comments on that? What anyone else thinks it should be named, or if you have anything to say about you think COLT conference shouldn't be renamed?
I mean, we could always like go back to the traditional 212 360 and leave it at that instead of just strictly calling it COLT conference.
Also, I forget what chapter it was, but a member said something along the lines of, this is the one event that chapter officers have throughout the year. Anyone have any thoughts on that or ideas?
I believe that if we leave COLT conference and change it to where everyone's allowed, that they could possibly have something for just your chapter officers, but then this could cost extra money that we'd have to find from somewhere. So I believe that we should just change COLT conference for everyone and just leave it. I mean, that would probably be the best idea.
So, running off what the last speaker said, there could always be a portion of like when you do the COLT conference or when they plan it, there could always be a portion they set aside like for specifically the officers so that the entire conference is open to everybody, but there's still individual training for the officers.
I do have a different idea that I think would be helpful. We could keep like the whole like cult thing, but like a week so or after, if we can have one conference that's for the freshmen where the officers can teach them how to become officers and what it's like to be an officer and all that for FFA.
Mr. Lejeune,
For general FFA.
I'm sorry, say again.
is the at the bottom of the research page where it says where it shows how Jennings used to do the Greenhead conference, do they still do that?
They do. They do theirs every year, from what I understand.
Okay, so there is already a conference for like freshmen or Ag ones.
From the research I did, they open it up to students in Jeff Davis Parish. I don't think it's been opened up beyond that.
So maybe we could do some maybe there could be a kind of collaboration between State FA and Jennings to create a bigger kind of Green Hand conference for like statewide.
So does anyone else have any comments, any thoughts about the idea of having two separate conferences?
So originally in my position I was for having just for a conference solely for officers, but looking at the research now, I don't think it'd be that beneficial to have a conference solely for officers because uh just because the financial issues that come with it, because you'd have to think that a lot of areas would either be or a lot of chapters would be too far away to effectively come to the conference. That would probably be like a 2-day conference or so to come all that way just for 2 days. Um, so I think we should do one conference, but still have a section put aside for officers to do individualized training.
Keep in mind also, to clarify these COLT conferences, there was one in each area. It wasn't one statewide event. Each area hosted a COLT conference. 212 360 was one statewide event.
Does anyone else have any comments, any other ideas that they want to bring up?
Mr. Lejeune, if no one else has any ideas, do you just want us to move on? Any more ideas?
I mean, that's up to you and your delegates. I'll stop sharing this.
Okay. Anyone else have any final thoughts or any ideas?
So what I would recommend we do now, let's have your secretary pull up a document to type on. Who is your secretary going to be?
Bailey, I think.
Bailey, I will give you the ability to share your screen. All right, Bailey, so if you can pull up something to type on and go ahead and share that, y'all can start formulating the report.
Okay. Just 1 second. Is it desktop or application, Mr. K?
Say that again.
Do I share desktop or application?
When you click on share screen, you should be able to either share the actual screen that it's on, or if it's like a Word document, you can share that directly, however you prefer to do it. Just try it, and we'll tell you if it comes up.
Okay. All right. Can y'all see my screen?
Yep, you're good. Just make it big. There you go. That'll work.
I've kind of been taking notes and trying to. Right.
Peyton, what I would recommend y'all do, come up with a few recommendations, have a delegate propose each recommendation, and y'all debate and vote on one recommendation at a time. And then once they're all on the report, then you'll vote on the report as a whole.
All right, Lauren, do you want to facilitate the process of getting the recommendations moved and debated?
Sure, I can. Mr. Lejeune, did you say one of our voting delegates need to move?
Yeah, what I would do is I would have a voting delegate propose propose a recommendation, and then you can debate and vote on each one individually. And then once that's done, then we'll vote on the report as a whole.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So one of our ideas was to create a new event for the purpose of the same event, and maybe revise the name. Does any voting delegate want to move that we start debate on that topic?
Would it be helpful if I showed you a report example from last year?
Yes, sir.
Hang on 1 second.
Ponchatoula, did you have something to say?
I was gonna go ahead and move the first issue.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Well, let her state what the proposal is first.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Let Ponchatoula say what her recommendation is first.
Okay, Ponchatoula, can you go ahead and state what your recommendation is?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we revise the name for COLT conference to 2/2/12/360.
Do I hear a second? Just a reminder, I'm not sure if I'm correct, but looking at the information sheet, I believe what it said was either in the past there have been conferences 212 and there have been 360 conferences. I'm not sure if they were the same conference.
It's two separate conferences, but they were held on the same day. One was for 9th and 10th graders, 212 is for 9th and 10th graders, 360 is designed for 11th and 12th graders. And that is hosted by National FFA.
Do I hear a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, is there any debate? Ponchatoula.
So as we're creating new information and creating basically a new conference, I do think that we should change the name so that it's representing not only what we did in the past, but what we're changing into now. I don't really have any ideas right now for the name, but
And it's okay if you don't have a specific idea on a name. That can be something that would be decided later on if you want to word it that way. Right now, you just need to decide specifically how you want to word this particular recommendation.
Is there any further debate?
Mr. Lejeune, I have a question.
Sure, what you got?
Well, since it's regard with National FFA, would that be a legal guard?
Using the name 212-360?
Yes, sir.
I don't know. That would be something that we. But you can word it that way if that's what you wanted to name it. You could say name it 212-360 pending approval from National FFA. I don't know if it's a trademark thing or not.
Well, I'm okay with the name if it's okay with everything else.
Ponchatoula, were you going to debate again, or is your hands just still up?
sorry.
Is there any?
Just so we can clarify, Ponchatoula, what you're saying is you want to propose that we recommend to change the name of this conference back to 212-360?
Yes, sir.
All right, Bailey, go ahead and type it that way.
Like that, Mr. Cade?
Yeah, that's good.
Mr. Cade, I also have a question of clarification.
Yeah.
Are we going to vote on recommendation?
Yeah, I would vote on each recommendation individually. And what you can do for this, if you want to, you can just say you can just ask if there's any opposition. If nobody's opposed, just do it by general consent. That makes it a lot easier.
Is there any further debate on this recommendation? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. Do I have the general consent of the Assembly to recommend that we change the name of COLT Conference to 212-360?
I think.
Sir?
I say, go ahead. You can move on.
Hearing no opposition, we will recommend that we change the name of COLT Conference to 212-360. Does any member want to move discussion on the next recommendation? This recommendation is that we include a portion of COLT conference specifically for chapter officer while still allowing all members to go. Okay, then hearing no one, does anyone want to move on to the third recommendation that we discussed, that there is a state green hand conference as well as COLT conference? Ponchatoula.
Mrs. Chairman, I move that there be a statewide Green Hand Conference as well as COLT conference.
Second.
I move that there be a statewide Green Hand Conference as well as a COLT conference.
Hearing a motion, and there's been a motion and second that we do a statewide Green Hand Conference as well as COLT conference. Is there any debate? Ponchatoula.
Mrs. Chairman, I believe this would be very beneficial to the state, not only to our members, because it would allow not only our upperclassmen to gain the leadership skills they need to run the chapter, but it would also show our green hands exactly what they would be going into if they decide to become a part of leadership in the chapters.
Is there any further debate? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. All in favor that we do this, that we recommend to do a statewide Green Hand Conference as well as COLT conference, please raise your hand. Mr. Lejeune, is that how we're gonna do it on here?
Yeah, that'll work.
Bailey, do you have that written down?
Okay.
4.
All right. So
Okay, down, please. Could everyone please stop raising their hands? Benton, your hand is still raised. Benton, I don't know if you can hear me, but your hand is still raised. Mr. Lejeune, what do you want me to do?
Delegates, keep in mind that we have yet to vote on a recommendation to allow people other than chapter officers to attend this conference. So we may need to make that motion and then vote that one in or out.
Mr. Lejeune, I'm still trying to vote for this recommendation, but some people still don't have their hands down.
You may not be able to hear. There it goes. All right.
All opposed to the recommendation that we have a statewide Greenham conference as well as COLT conference, please raise your hand. Bailey, there were 4 for the motion and none against.
Okay, got it.
Does anyone have anything else to come before the assembly? Ponchatoula?
Mrs. Chairman, I move that we revise the event to include all members and not just chapter officers.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded that we recommend that we revise the event to include all FFA members and not chapter officers. Is there any debate? If there is no debate, we will proceed to vote. All those in favor that we recommend that we revise the event to include all FFA members and not just chapter officers, please raise your hand. Down, please. All opposed, please raise your hand. Seeing that there was 3 for and none against, we will recommend that we revise the event to include all FFA members, not just chapter officers. Is there any further business? I'm sorry, did someone say something? Is there any further business to come before the assembly? Ms. Lejeune or Peyton, I'm not sure, but now would we have a final debate on the report?
Yeah, so now our discussion is going to be on the report as a whole, and if we want to recommend the entire report. So we can begin debate on that at any time.
And Peyton, what you'll need is for a delegate to move that report be accepted as written.
Okay, if someone wants to do that, that would be great. Cecily.
This motion be accepted as written.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
There it is. The question is, shall we move this report to be accepted as read? Issue number 1, review chapter officer leadership training COLT conferences And the recommendations are changing the name of COLT conferences to 212-360, have a statewide Green Hand conference as well as COLT conferences, and revise the event to include all FFA members, not just chapter officers. Cecily, as the maker of the motion, you have the right to first debate.
I think you can move on to anyone else, Peyton.
Okay, anyone in general have any debate? Ponchatoula.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that this report should be taken as written, seeing as everything has been discussed and it has now come to a point where the issue not only favors officers, but it also favors the other members who could be impacted by these conferences.
Any further debate? All right, hearing none, we will just proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand in chat, or not in chat, but as a participant. Okay, down, please. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Down, please. The vote was 5-4, none against. We will recommend that the name of COLT conferences be changed to 212-360, have a statewide Green Hand conference as well as COLT conferences, and revise the event to include all FFA members, not just chapter officers.